To start, Avi?
Already, yeah.
All right, great. So welcome to our fourth COVID-19 webinar, where we bring to you the opportunity to ask questions and hear from the people who are at the front line of global research and innovation. We are live on Zoom and Facebook. I would like to begin by acknowledging our event partners, the Embassy of Israel in Canberra, and in particular, our distinguished guest, Mr. Mark Sofer, Israel's ambassador to Australia, whom we'll hear from in a little while. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ori Danieli. I am the Executive Director at Technion Australia. Technion is Israel's Institute of Technology and among the world's leading dedicated to science, technology, and engineering. Technion Australia specifically is part of a worldwide network of 25 or so associations with the mission to support Technion research development, infrastructure, and student and faculty by providing funding and scholarships. Before formally introducing our speaker today, I would like to welcome Mr. Mark Sofer, Israel's ambassador to Australia, to say a few words, and formally welcome our guests. Mark was born in London. He holds a bachelor degree in economics and international relations from London School of Economics and a master's in international relations from the Hebrew University. In 1981, he joins Israel's foreign ministry, and he held diplomatic positions in Peru, Norway, and New York City. He also served as the ambassador to Ireland from 1999 to 2002 and was a policy advisor to then foreign minister, the late Shimon Peres. That was back in the early 90s. In 2008, he became our ambassador, or Israel's ambassador to India. And in 2017, he commenced as the Israeli ambassador to Australia, which he is obviously today. Mark, we know that you're very busy despite being in isolation, and we really thank you for giving up some of your time and being with us today. It's a great honor for us. Over to you, Mark.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Ori, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everybody in Australia, and good morning, everybody in Israel. I'll be brief because I doubt very much if most of you or all of you have actually come to listen to me, but more likely to listen to Avi, and that's probably why you're here. But I must say it's an honor for me to be here on this occasion with the Technion, which is certainly one of Israel's, in fact, one of the world's great academic institutions, great scientific institution, which we're really proud that we have within our borders, really, as an Israeli leading force in all forms of scientific research. And now, of course, everybody's dedicated to the COVID-19, the coronavirus. Unlike most countries of the world, as you know, we haven't been only grappling with one crisis, if you will, which is the COVID-19 crisis, but we've been having two. We've had no government basically in place for the last year and a half, which causes a lot of problems for decision-making processes, but hopefully that'll be behind us, or it seems to be behind us the day before yesterday. In general, I think, as Avi just said, we seem to be doing very well, or quite well, in the issue of tackling the effects of the coronavirus in Israel. We have about 14,000 or so people who've been affected or who have actually caught the virus, and about 187 people have passed away or have died as a result of it. Mainly people at the ages of 80 and upwards who had what we call background diseases of other nature, and of course it's clicked into them. Obviously, we're not doing nearly as well as in that regard as Australia. I'm not one of those great fans who believe in comparing one country to another. Each and every country has its own particular peculiarities, its own particular characteristics, which set it apart from everybody else and from everyone else. And nonetheless, Australia, of course, is at the forefront in grappling the crisis, and that's not something which I'm saying anything new, particularly here. However, in Israel, I must say that one thing that we are particularly proud of is the research into all aspects of the coronavirus, not just in the race, not a competitive race, but in the important speed that we need to put into finding a vaccine, or at least a cure for the virus on the one hand, and also to deal with all the after effects and the other effects of breathing and the problems that come with it once one contracts the virus. And there are very few countries in the world whose scientists actually are taken as being the leading force in all of this effort to contain and to control the virus and to find a vaccine and or a cure and I'm glad that incidentally Australia is one of them. I'm glad that we are among the top of the leading 5, 6, 4 countries whose scientists are up there working together elsewhere. I think I'll stop there, actually, Ori, if you don't mind. It's again, I'll be listening in because I don't know anything about the subject matter at all. I'm just a petty bureaucrat. However, I think that what we will hear is something which is crucial for all of us. It's a new insight. It's something which we haven't read about, and something which, again, you can expect only coming out of a great institution like the Technion.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mark. That was a great introduction. I appreciate that. And I want to introduce our guest speaker today, Professor Avi Schroeder. Avi is a chemical engineer from the Technion. He's also the head of the Targeted Drug Delivery and Personalized Medicine Group at the university. He completed his PhD at Ben-Gurion University and did his postdoctoral studies at MIT and at Cambridge Uni. He's the author of 50 research papers. He's got 17 patents to his name. He's the co-founder of several startups relating to vaccinations, and he's a recipient of over 50 international awards. Avi and his research group is aimed at improving patients' quality of life and bettering their the treatment of developing innovative medical technologies. Specifically nowadays, Avi is gaining quite a lot of media and professional attention following he and his team's research into preventative drugs that they're developing for the coronavirus, which is based on years of research into preventative drugs for virus attacking the shrimp industry. So recently, Avi was also recruited by the Israeli Defense Forces Home Front Command to advise on dealing with the epidemic in Israel. The last thing I'm going to say about Avi is that, before I hand over, is that he has never been to Australia. So I take this opportunity to virtually invite you to the land down under and hopefully have you here in the not so distant future. Over to you, Avi.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ori, and thank you very much to our ambassador, Mr. Sofer, for the introduction, really for participating. I think what the session really is about and highlighting is that at times that other countries are in a state of almost shutdown, total shutdown. Yesterday, I had a conference call with colleagues of mine from Italy, France, Spain, and other European countries. These countries are in almost a total shutdown. In Israel, we're in partial shutdown. Other countries, our friends in Australia, which are still working, and thankfully, people are healthy. It's a time really for joining forces together, and things that we cannot do here, we should do in Australia, and really to foster more collaborations between Israel, the Technion, Israel Institute of Technology, and our friends and colleagues from Australia. So thank you so much for joining today. Now, one thing I learned because Zoom became so popular is that these calls can become tedious, and I surely don't have any interest in doing that. So what I prefer is I'll start. I'll show a couple slides, and please stream in your questions, and we'll try to do this more like a question and answer session. So because, and I'll touch on the technologies we're developing too, of course. Because for technical reasons, people have to type in their questions into the chat. So there's a chat that everyone sees, so you can just type them in, and Oli will read them out to me because I won't be able to see them. I'll be presenting my screen. So let me first maybe show what the Technion looks like on a regular day. So, oh, 1 second. Yeah, wrong screen. So, okay, during our normal daily time, this is my group at the Technion. It's a team of really amazing scientists from different disciplines. We have chemists and biologists and engineers and medical doctors and mechanical engineers and chemical engineers and everyone working together to try in a multidisciplinary manner to develop new medicines. Specifically, we work on treating cancer and neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer and Parkinson's disease. But we also were fortunate to work throughout the past several years also on other viral treatments. And we've been adapting in the world of agriculture, and we've been adapting them recently also for trying to treat humans. So specifically, one of the first technologies we developed in the past, and this is in our normal day today, is a treatment for osteoarthritis. We know that many adults, their joints become degraded as we age. And we asked ourselves if nanotechnology can be used to reduce the problems that are associated with osteoarthritis, with the degeneration of the joints inside the body. And we invented nanoparticles that are injected directly into the joints, and they reduce friction and wear in the joint itself. In that manner, the patients which have problems performing daily activities, such as getting in and out of a chair, climbing up and down stairs, or in Australia, going to the beach and actually being able to run maybe on the beach, now can actually go and regain that quality of life. I see our ambassador is on the line, and I should highlight here, he used to work with Shimon Peres, rest in peace, really a true visionary who marked Israel, that Israel should become a leader in nanotechnology. And Shimon Peres at the time infused a lot of research money into nanotechnology, making Israel one of the global leaders in that field. And since then, we've been working on different fronts, and specifically the front that our laboratory works on is using nanotechnology for improving the healthcare of patients. So this is just one example of treating patients with a degenerative disease of the joints. But our lab also works on works also a lot on cancer and Parkinson's and Alzheimer. I think as an engineer, this graph, when it came back to me, this was the results from the clinical trial, made me happiest because I saw that an idea we had in our mind could solve a real problem that many, many patients actually suffer from. We were looking at the ability of the patients after being injected our nanotechnology or nanoparticles into their joints. We were looking at their ability to regain daily function. And you can see these blue graphs actually show that over a period here of 1 month, these patients, 70% of the patients were actually running, walking, doing their daily activity. And I just don't want to become too tedious on the graphs, but I'll just tell you that patients that have osteoarthritis usually take a lot of pain medicine because their joints hurt them a lot. And we actually saw that the patients that were using our technology, not only were they improving their function, but they were also able to reduce by about 70% the amount of medication, pain medicine they're taking. So we actually had a good side effect of this treatment. So that's our daily life when life was normal, and I would say the pre-corona era. This is what the lab looks like today. So since corona struck Israel too, we had to, one, downsize the number of people we have working inside the lab at any moment. And we also decided to work in shifts so that we have less physical contact between researchers, or larger distance actually. And we also decided to focus on the main problem that science has to solve these years, which is coronavirus. And I'd like to just highlight the three people that were by chance captured here in this picture. So you can see in the far back, you can see Mo. Mo is a student. She came from a very underprivileged town in Israel, very low socioeconomic town. And she finished straight A's, her undergraduate, and then her master's thesis too. She's a chemist by training, so she also had, when she transferred to the Technion, she had to become an engineer. And of course, she completed that with straight A's. Together with her is, on the right-hand side, you can't see his face right now, is Mohammed. Mohammed is a Muslim student in our laboratory. And on the left-hand side is Yego, who's actually a student that came to us from Russia and asked to join the laboratory and work together. I have to say that this is a picture that a photographer came by and took by chance, but it represents what the Technion is about. The Technion is about taking any person based on his or her potential and actually trying to advance the world and bettering the world. In our lab, it's also about developing new medicines. And this is, for me, the story of the Technion, and this is what empowers me every day when I come to the lab, meeting these so talented people. Just a bit more on what it looks like and how people are actually working on today when they're developing new medicines. So what is nanotechnology actually related? How is it related to study of viruses? And how did we even get into the story? So first, I'd like to give just one basic fact that I think is important for people that are studying or that are in this era. So on the right-hand side, we have a bacteria. And on the left-hand side, we have a virus. I just took these pictures off the web. A virus is actually a nanoparticle. It's a natural nanoparticle. The size of a virus, of a coronavirus, is about 1/1000th the width of a hair on our head. So if you take a hair on your head and you divide its width by 1,000, that's approximately the size of each one of these viruses. It's much bigger, it's much smaller. A virus is much smaller than any cell inside our body. That's why it can invade and hijack the cells we have inside our body. Inside the virus, there's a genetic material. In this case, it's called RNA. And this genetic material takes over the cell, and actually, instead of producing what the cell is supposed to produce, the cell starts producing more and more viruses. On the right-hand side, we have a bacteria. Coronavirus is a virus, not a bacteria. Bacteria, just to say, is about 1,000 to 10,000 times larger than a coronavirus. And bacteria actually is a cell, meaning that it can self-replicate, unlike a virus which needs to hijack a cell in order to produce more. So again, the reason we entered this is in the past is that viruses are also types of nanoparticles, and as people with expertise in that scale and those dimensions, we thought that we could bring value to this area. And where it actually started, now some of you cannot see, but actually on the back of my head I have a yarmulke. It's not a very large one, my relatives or my mother says, but it does exist there. And I was not very familiar with this creature that's in my hand right here. So this is actually a shrimp. It's a healthy shrimp. It's still young. And as a kosher eater person, I haven't eaten many shrimp in my life. Actually, never tasted them. But several years ago, I was approached by a group of entrepreneurs who asked me, in a delicate manner, I will say, if I can help them solve a major issue that exists in agriculture, or more specifically in aquaculture, or even more specifically in shrimp. And specifically, the problem they were facing is that about 20 to 30% of the global production or growth of shrimp every year is stopped, or the shrimp die due to a very severe viral disease. This viral disease at the time was called white spot syndrome. It still is very active. It affects Australia shrimp growth. It affects the growth of shrimp in Asia, in South America, in Iran, in last year, in the Philippines 3 years ago, and it actually wiped out all the shrimp culture in that specific region, leaving about, or in the global manner, reducing by between 20 to 30%, depending on the year, the amount of shrimp that are grown. Now, because shrimp are an important source of dietary fats and protein, it is important to try and grow enough shrimp in order to produce food for countries that rely on shrimp. And at the time, there was no treatment for this viral disease. And we had a vision, or we had a thought we could maybe use a new biological phenomena to treat shrimp. Now, just this is actually from, I think, 2 weeks ago. So this is April 12th, sorry. So we're today, April 14th. I took this off just a website, China's shrimp farmers terrified. This is a new virus, just to show how important viral diseases are in agriculture, not only in our human life. And we were aware that there was no treatment for treating viruses. That was several years ago, and we decided to develop a technology that will counter these deadly viruses. And specifically, because you can't go and inject one shrimp at a time, unlike humans where you can give a vaccination, we invented a food that has inside of the food a special vaccine or a special system for amplifying the shrimp's own immune system, which counters the virus and actually downregulates it and keeps the shrimp alive. And just to show, the technology took several years to develop because the shrimp had to eat these particles and they were absorbed inside their gastrointestinal tract. And I think this graph really explains how powerful a technology can be in treating viral diseases. So what this graph shows, and it is important for me if you have a second to look at your screens. So you can see here what happens when the shrimp are exposed to a virus. So all the shrimp are alive when you start the experiment, and then you expose them to the virus, and you can see that within 1 week, all the shrimp that were exposed to the virus die, except for those shrimp that were vaccinated using our specific newly developed feed, which amplifies the immune system of the shrimp against the virus. And you can see in this case, the graph of the orange graph, which is the upper graph, shows how many shrimp stayed alive in percent. And we're talking here above 96% of the shrimp are alive after being vaccinated with our specific feed, compared to 0 that survived when they're not treated with the food. So when coronavirus outbreak occurred, we asked ourselves, could we learn the lessons we took from shrimp and could we adapt them to humans? Could we actually take this mechanism, this technology, which we know is very, very effective for aquaculture, and can we adapt it now for treating humans? And that's exactly what we've been working on since then. And we have some aspects that make it easier. We can inject to humans, and we have some aspects that make it harder, which we need to amplify it actually a little more than in the shrimp. I think at this point, Ori, with your permission, I've spoken for too long already. We can start taking questions, and then I'll move on to other aspects of technologies that we're developing.
Sure. Okay. Great. Thank you. That was really interesting. I do have a lot of questions people sent in advance, so I might start with those. We heard in our previous webinars, which were with Professor Michael Wallach here from the University of Technology in Sydney, who mentioned that if there's one good point about this whole unfortunate circumstances we're in is there's a lot more collaboration than usually. A lot of universities and research institutions are working together. There are much less restrictions in terms of protecting information and so on. So I wanted to, if you can elaborate a little bit about global and domestic collaboration into COVID, as well as perhaps how do you protect IP in these circumstances?
Yeah, so one, I'll say that I think we're seeing collaborations, but not enough. I actually think that the one way scientists are collaborating is through a lot of publications that are coming out And these publications are very helpful because we had no knowledge about coronavirus before this pandemic outbreak. And now we have a lot of knowledge, still not enough, but because of rapid share of findings, we see a lot of knowledge coming out. I'm saying I think we don't have enough collaborations, and that's also because of the IP issue. So I think if people understand that if they want to translate their finding into a new medicine, they will have to protect it also with intellectual property. And I think that is slowing down slightly the publication regarding new technologies. So new technologies, not only scientific discoveries, and here I would want to differentiate between understanding the problem and actually developing a solution. So understanding the problem, we see a lot of papers being published, a lot of findings. What is the coronavirus? What is its composition? Who is affected? But we see a lot less publications regarding new technological solutions. One of the reasons is that you have to understand the problem in order to find a solution. But the other is exactly what you said, is that people, I think, and I can understand that, are protecting also their intellectual property before going out and explaining about it. So I think one solution we can have is actually more work with government in order to enhance more clinical trials and rapid IP protection for to also address that concern.
Thank you. I've got a question here from Maureen, who firstly invites you to stay with her when you come to Australia. But also, how long do you think this virus will last? And, you know, when do you estimate, or the experts estimate, that some of the restrictions will be kind of significantly lifted?
So, Maria, thank you very much for the invitation. I'll take you up for that. So, I think it's a huge question how long the virus is going to stay. But I'll just say this: that it's gonna stay with us for a very long time. And I'll explain. The world we had before coronavirus and the world we have after coronavirus are going to look differently. Specifically, one of the things that are going to change is the way we test people when we enter areas with a large public involvement. And for example, when you get on an airplane, I think every one of us was always concerned of a person sitting next to him or her that was coughing or sneezing, right? You get off the plane and you say, oh, I have to get a shower. The guy next to me, he was coughing the entire flight. And then you get it, right? I mean, many times. Now, with coronavirus, I think exemplified to us that in a case that one person has coronavirus on an airplane, there's good chance that 30% of the people on that flight getting off will have the virus. So when we get on airplanes in the future, we're going to have to test people to make sure that they don't have this contagious disease. When we want to run conferences or weddings or other public meetings, we're going to have to change. And I don't think we'll all want to go walking around with masks all the time. So I think it's here to stay in the aspect that because we're more and more populated, we're going to have more and more measures for rapid testing of people. When we enter a mall, when we enter an airplane, or when we go to public meetings, because we want to hold those social interactions, but we also want to make sure that when we have these social interactions, we can't that we're safe.
All right. So a question leading up from that, from Eva here: how will you do rapid testing, as you mentioned?
Yeah. So there are going to be several measures. One of the approaches that people are looking at are phone apps that will actually test you before you go into a terminal, an airline terminal, or before you enter a mall, and you'll have a barcode that says yes, you were tested today and you're okay, and you can actually enter. So that's probably one area. My brother is a medical doctor, and he works in the Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem, and there they test the physicians once a week to see that they don't have that. This is a more expensive test that to make sure they don't have the virus. But more than that, they test some of them also to see if they already generated antibodies inside their body and they're immune to coronavirus. I'll just say that not every person that was ill with coronavirus has the antibodies to the disease, meaning some of the people, even though they were sick once, it doesn't mean they won't be sick again. And more than that, and this is something that I think many people are less aware of, is that the coronavirus 2 that we're talking about today already has 4 forms of the virus. The coronavirus we have in Italy is different than the coronavirus we have in the United States, and is different than the coronavirus we have elsewhere in China, for example. Meaning that a person that may have been ill by one of these subtypes of mutated coronavirus that actually changed already over time and improved itself, may not be immune to a coronavirus that's elsewhere in the world. And we all understand how this actually requires measures. And I think the most important measure we have to bring is a vaccine. So we have to invent a vaccine. Just as we had in the past for other outbreaks, we have to invent a vaccine for coronavirus so that every person is safe, especially our loved relatives, which are above the age of 60, which are in much more significant risk to coronavirus. I think we owe it as a society to invent a vaccine to every person. And I'll also say that also young people have passed away, but the main risk is to the people we love most and who are taking it, I think, in the most responsible manner, our adult relatives. They stay at home. My parents haven't exited their house for 1 month. We have food delivered to them. I'll say that from a personal perspective, it's becoming not easy. Psychologically, for an older couple to stay at home all day, I salute them. I don't know if I'd be as strong as they are, but we have to find a solution that will be a vaccine so that people can go back to their normal lives.
Good, thank you. I'll go to one of the questions that was submitted earlier. Chloroquine, which is the malaria-preventing drug that President Trump often refers to as the magic cure for COVID-19, and we know that Bibi Netanyahu has ordered containers of it in the hope that it will help. Is there evidence that it actually works? What's your view on that?
Yes, so I'll say that chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine are 2 medicines that were developed in the past. They have very hard side effects. They are antiviral. They have some antiviral effect, but the side effects of these medications are very, very harsh. There has been, and I think the best news I've heard in the past week is there is and I'm sure in Australia you guys have heard it too, a clinical trial that was run in the United States with another antiviral treatment, not a vaccine, a treatment, seems to prove effective. Still not all the data is in, but this is data that was leaked out of the clinical trial, and something that would probably never happen in the past. Today, people understand the urgency of this, and I'll say that we're seeing more and more positive data coming out of clinical trials. So I would say chloroquine would be the first one that people looked at, but now there's a new set of medicines, more sophisticated medicines that are working even better. And I'll just in a nutshell, I'll give an explanation between the two. So when a virus enters our cell, it invades a cell inside the body, it's taken up first by a small quarantine region inside the cell. This quarantine region is called an endosome. And it actually is supposed to break up what enters the cell to make sure that the cell will stay protected and not invaded. Of course, the virus has ways to override that protection. And what chloroquine does is it actually explodes those quarantine regions and exposes the virus more early, and then usually damages the virus in a way that it can't duplicate. The next generation of medicines is related also to the work we're doing, and also to the work that was leaked from the clinical trial in the United States. You actually insert the RNA has 4 building blocks, and you insert a fake building block into the RNA. And when that building block is inserted into the RNA of the virus cannot duplicate. Super sophisticated, I'll say, very, very smart, the people that invented it. What we're working on is on a slightly different angle, is we prevent from the body to continue in producing the viral RNA using a newly discovered biological mechanism. So I'd say the earlier medicines such as chloroquine, which have hard side effects, are more like a global, they affect the entire body and not every patient can absorb them. The next generation is more targeted to the virus. Again, these are treatments, not vaccinations. So that's important to say. In the shrimp, we do amplify the immune system so it acts like a vaccination. In humans, we could do it. We still need to think what would be best.
Great. So, Avi, just from a time management perspective, we've got more questions coming in, but do you want to go back to your presentation for a while or continue with questions?
Yeah, I'll do a couple more slides. Let's do 5 more slides, and then we'll do, so I'll talk about ARDS, which is a lung, which is what happens to many of the coronavirus patients, which reached the clinic. So one of the aspects we understood is important is to direct the medicine to where it's most needed inside the body. Specifically, we invented lung-targeted nanoparticles. Nanoparticles that, after being injected intravenously, they target the lungs, and that's where they deliver or distribute the medicine. So the area which is most infected, meaning our lungs, will actually be treated in the best manner. This is just from one of the Israeli news reports. Again, talking about ARDS. ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome, which affects many of the patients. And a bit of physiology of the lung. So we all know that we breathe in air and how important it is for us for oxygenating our blood. And when we look at our healthy lung, so the air goes in, it enters the lungs, it enters deep into an area called the alveoli. The alveoli is where the blood and the air actually come in very close contact. So the air we breathe comes into this region of the alveoli. The blood with our carbon dioxide passes next to it, and there's this very thin membrane through which the oxygen from the air enters the blood, and the carbon dioxide from our exhaled air leaves the blood and enters the air going out, our exhaled air. So this membrane right here has to be very thin because the oxygen has to diffuse in and the carbon dioxide to diffuse out. When we are infected by COVID-19, look at what happens to this membrane between the blood vessel and between the lung. One, the lungs become full with liquid, and the air doesn't enter well. The gases, the oxygen and the carbon dioxide, do not diffuse well due to inflammation that occurs here. And what we asked ourselves is, could we actually use nanotechnology to improve the treatment of coronavirus, which induces this acute respiratory distress syndrome? This is just some of the biology around it. And what we did is we invented nanoparticles that are targeting the lungs, and they contain inside them medicines that reduce this infection and inflammation inside of the lungs. And one image from the Technion microscope, you can see here, these are nanoparticles. They look rather similar to the virus particles which we see on the news. These don't have spikes on them, but we can also make them with spikes. The medicine is inside, and actually you need very special microscopes in order to look at particles at this scale. So their size is around 100 nanometers. Again, 1/1000th the width of a hair on our head, or only a hair in your case, it's a hair on your beard. It also works, same math. And so very, very small. And what it requires from us as engineers is to be able to actually work at very small scale. And this is totally different than what we used to do in the past. And I'll be glad to explain how we produce nanoparticles if there's any interest in that. So Ori, I'm sending out the question. If people are interested, I can give two words about that. But again, lung-targeted nanoparticles in order to deliver the medicine in a targeted fashion directly to the lung. So what does it look like? Still in preclinical trials, but you can see it's very strong. On the left-hand side are infected lungs that were exposed to not COVID-19, but very similar. And the nanoparticles are actually labeled, and you can see that they accumulate or target the lungs compared to the lungs in the control groups. So very effective targeting, and hopefully closer to a better treatment of ARDS. Ori?
All right. Yeah. Thank you for that, Avi. So before we move on with more questions, I want to go back to the comment before about time frames. There's one thing that's that I think people really need to understand is if we have everything that's required and we identify the right vaccine, what is a realistic time frame until it's produced in mass content and really can be implemented into society?
Yeah, I'll answer in two fronts. We're looking at a real global pandemic. The economy is shut down globally, and all of us are going to be struck. This is something that we're all aware of, and there'll be also a global effort. A discovery is made that every country will produce as fast as it can, will produce a medicine, will produce this vaccine. So once it's approved, and I think that all governments which are working together today to help. So I'll say when this pandemic broke out, I remember I was on a train on the way to a meeting, and I jumped off the train in one of the stops because that same day we were sending from my lab together with a close colleague of mine who's a Chinese colleague. We sent 10,000 masks to Wuhan as the pandemic broke out. We had an Israeli manufacturer of masks. We arranged it overnight and we sent to Wuhan 10,000 masks. Last month, or just before Passover, the group that we sent those 10,000 masks to, and we know that Wuhan today is much better, they sent back 20,000 masks to the Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem. So I think we're seeing, we sent from the Technion 10,000 masks that we were able to arrange. And we're seeing that the people from China were helping us back. When a vaccine is actually discovered, I think all governments will work together to make sure that those people that discovered it, one, will be compensated, but more importantly, that we actually distribute it to as many people in a short period of time. Short meaning that probably once a vaccine is discovered, the production will take less than 4 or 5 more months for the entire world population. And throughout, what will happen is that first, the populations that are most necessary, such as teachers, medical doctors, people that can bring economy back to running, they'll be getting the first rounds of vaccines, and then we'll go wider to the people that are greatest risk, adults, and then we'll go wider to all the security officers and people that come in a lot of contact with public, and then the entire community will be vaccinated.
Thank you. So leading up to that, a question from the crowd is, if you can explain a little bit how, with developing a vaccine, how will it deal with various mutations? And also in the same sort of space, is there a difference between the viruses in different regions? The virus that we're experiencing here in Australia is similar in terms of its structure to the one in Israel and other places.
Yeah, so a vaccine, one of its strengths is actually is how wide it actually is, and we know that for example, in the flu, we need to vaccinate every year, or take a vaccine every year for people who take the vaccine, because the flu of one year is not the flu of the other year, and also our immune system sometimes needs a boost. So when people will be looking at the vaccine for coronavirus, I hope that today, if there are 4 types, today there are already 4 subtypes of the coronavirus, that at least 3 of the 4 will be included inside the vaccine. So it's always a question of how fast you can develop it. And this is why also collaborations and international collaborations are so important, because, for example, if the vaccine will be developed only for the US subtype, let's say, of the coronavirus, then what will happen if a person from Europe or Asia or Australia reaches the United States? He or she can spread a new form. But more worrisome, I think, is that the rest of the world wouldn't have such a vaccine. So I think today we are seeing collaborations, and it's important though, and we've learned this also in the past, when we look at the flu vaccine and we look at hepatitis B vaccination. It actually, how wide the vaccine works is very different from region to region in the world. For example, if you look at hepatitis B vaccination in China is less effective than in the United States. The same goes also for the flu vaccine. So we'll have to make sure that the vaccine is not only wide enough to cover the virus, but also wide enough to cover different people, so that we're all protected.
Thank you. Question from Doran Lazaros from Melbourne. We don't hear much about how important the right diet and nutrition is to combating this and other viruses. Something that perhaps we can do while we wait for a silver bullet. Do you have any comments or suggestions? What should we be eating or avoiding in these times?
Yeah, so I'll say that one, of course, maintaining good health and a good attitude is always important, and maybe that's one of the reasons that the Australian people are dealing so well with this virus. I mean, it's no secret that you guys live in one of the most beautiful places on earth after Jerusalem. I'm saying that very carefully. We have our ambassador online. Jerusalem comes first. Israel and then Australia probably in par, right? But really beautiful country, and I think also the lifestyle. So food, of course, is important. Keeping a healthy diet. I'll just say something really interesting. But again, this is not any just an anecdote, not any medical like.
Advice.
Yeah, so I'm not trying to advise. So there is this there is a timin, which is is an herb, which is actually antiviral. It's even on the US EPA list, and it's also an herb that many people add to their food. We know curcumin is an anti-cancer agent and also can be given as an herb. Again, I'll say that's good at maintaining a regular diet and actually keeping ourselves. Vitamin C, of course, is important for holding our immune system. I think where science and medicine are actually focusing, though, now are patients that are already after that situation. So the general population, which is healthy and also keeps a healthy diet, that's great. But there are also people where also with a healthy diet, if they're exposed to the virus, they may actually develop a much more severe form of the disease. And their herbs alone probably will not be strong enough to save their lives. And where medicine intervenes is for those fractions of society which are rather large, especially for coronavirus, where the regular healthy diet and healthy lifestyle will not be enough to support their ability, the internal ability to fight the virus. So I think there's, of course, a healthy diet is important and healthy lifestyle is super important. We're also talking about people that alone will not be able to save them. And as a society, we have the responsibility to develop medicines and vaccines so that every person has the right to live and to be protected.
Thank you. And I think also heating your food, I heard, helps as well. Does it kill the virus?
Yeah, so that's Ori, very true. In the Army, when I was called up now to the Home Front Command as a scientist from the Technion, and we learned a lot about, and we also tried to help as much as we could in trying to prevent contamination. So we were working mainly in old age homes and homes of people that are invalid, that were contaminated by the virus. And then we had to bring these hospitals or daycare centers back to activity. So those, we were decontaminating them. And we were we were also teaching the staff, and what you're saying is very true. The virus, coronavirus, if you heat it let's say you cook your food, the coronavirus will not survive. So if you bake your food, or if you cook your chicken or seafood, the coronavirus will not survive on it. I think that this is the right time also to try and eat more cooked foods rather than eat, for example, raw meat or things like that, which can actually harbor the virus and contaminate you. Same goes for washing your hands with soap and water. Is very effective. Soap and water is probably the best hand disinfectant. Trying to stay safe is of course is important. And if someone has a person that has coronavirus at home, I can also now or offline also give some recommendations how to try and protect the other people in the house from becoming contaminated by that specific person. So absolutely keeping good measures and washing fruits and vegetables, trying to peel wherever you can, will prevent the virus from entering your home and contaminating your home.
Thank you, Avi. Question here from Alfredo. What is your view on the reports that COVID-19 has an impact on blood clotting and therefore useless to treat with ventilators?
So COVID-19 has this is work we're doing in the United States together with my colleague and friend, Dr. Joshua Schiffman and Dr. Kan Yost from the University of Utah. Again, an international collaboration between the Technion and other groups. So one, COVID-19 surely seems to have an impact on blood clotting. Regarding the ventilators, I think the ventilators today are very important for oxidating the blood of the patients. And ventilators actually vary from one type to another. We're learning as we're working, but surely there are patients here in Israel which were on ventilators for 11 or even 2 weeks, 11 days or 2 weeks, and recovered. We had some very happy stories here. People that were treated both by medicine and had to be ventilated so that their blood oxidation levels are high, and their lives were saved. So ventilators are very, very important. I will say this, that there's still things that we don't know about the virus. And if you talk about blood clotting, and that's just one aspect of the virus, then learning also how you can counter, and that's exactly what our collaboration is with the University of Utah, how you can reduce blood clotting and as you are ventilating the patient, because oxygen you have to deliver to the patient for their brain, for their muscles, for the rest of the body. But how can you also reduce other factors which may be risking the patient? I think these are things we're learning, and only through sharing of a lot of data we'll be able to do that.
Great, we've got time for one or two more questions. I do want to apologize in advance for asking this question. It might be more a political view than a medical research, but putting on your military advisor hat on, can you share with us what's happening in the West Bank and Gaza in terms of the situation with the outbreak, as well as what is Israel doing to minimize the contamination or the impact?
Yeah, so I'll say the first hat I take is the hat of a person, and every officer in the Israeli army takes that hat first. And diseases know no borders, and as the people of Israel, we feel full responsibility for our neighbors in the Palestinian Authority for trying to keep their good health and helping them protect themselves. I'll say that there's full 100% collaboration between Israel, as there always was and there always will be, on the issues of treating diseases. We treat any person, and we help as much as we can, passing medicines and passing equipment to the Palestinian Authority. I know many of these efforts are under the radar of the news, and it's important because we want to make sure that our neighbors also, that no political issues stop the transfer of this medical care to the Western Bank and Gaza. I'll just say that there's full collaboration and full support, as there always was and always will be, between Israel and our neighbors. And we, even though sometimes we have significant disagreements around the security issues, we have no disagreement around medical care issues. And wherever, because we know the medical care in Israel is one of the best in the world, we supply and we provide all the help that the Palestinian Authority needs, and we see that as part of a responsibility. I'll say that also in our hat as the Technion. So one is, of course, a professor at the Technion, a commander also in the army, but also as faculty at Technion. We see our main effort today is in Tikkun Olam. Israel is a strong state. We can protect ourselves. We see our right to protect ourselves. But more than that, we see our responsibility, our global responsibility as the Technion, Israel Institute of Technology, to supply technology to the entire world to better the lives of people all around the globe. And that's what the Technion is about. The Technion is about producing healthier and better futures for any person, anywhere they are in the world. And please, I hope that with such a vision, we'll also bring peace to our region and peace to other countries. I'll say this is of uppermost importance, and we always strive for that, and we always perform in that direction.
Great, thank you for that. We're coming into the end of our webinar. I've got more questions to ask you, and people asking if, firstly, if you're happy to stick around for a bit, of course you're welcome to. But if not, we will ask you perhaps those questions offline as well. So before, I'm going to ask you a last question and closing remarks. So Ron Raub is asking, a vaccine will stimulate the immune response system. Are there any particular dangers with overstimulating the immune system for some people?
Yeah, so just because it's our last minute, I want to actually start by thanking our ambassador really for being here with us for this entire webinar. I appreciate it. I appreciate your work for Israel in Australia and for everything you've done all around the globe. Thank you very much. Thank you for being our public servant in that region. And thank you for everyone that was on the webinar. I'll be glad to continue and answer questions, most likely offline. I have another responsibility a bit later on, so I can maybe stay for a couple more minutes. But I'll just say that I think only through a global effort of developing new vaccines and new treatments also for patients that are already ill with COVID. And great effort in your support and friendship, we'll be able to end this pandemic and actually return to normality. Thank you so much for having me here today, and thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
Great, thank you, Avi. So we might stick around for a couple of minutes, but if you have to go, I just want to say a quick thank you to Mr. Ambassador Mark Sofer for joining us firstly, but also to your team for helping out with this webinar and for your support, and for in general for what you do for the community here and for Israel. Avi is not alone in the efforts of finding a solution, not alone, of course, globally, but also at the Technion. There's over 40 groups now working on different areas, trying to identify vaccine or prevention or different technology that can help deal with the situation. So we thank you, Avi, and the team at the Technion for everything you do. And, we greatly appreciate everything. Thank you all for joining us. You're always welcome to reach out to me and keep in touch. We'll try to keep you informed as much as we can at these times, and look after yourselves and stay safe. Thank you very much. So officially we're off. And Mark, you're welcome to say something if you want, or I'll unmute you. But for
nothing really to add to the work that we've just heard. It's just to say thank you. I hope that something comes out of this quickly. People are worried, and many of us are lay people. We don't always understand the ins and outs of this chromosome, and that we just want it to be over. But on the other hand, it feels good that professors and scientists like yourself are working hard, and I'm glad indeed to be representing a country which has people like you in the forefront of this fight against the coronavirus. Bottom line is that we all have something to gain. It's a global problem. It's not just one which is facing Israel. And that I do agree, and maybe we can be some more of help there, is to try and matchmake some of the work that you're doing with some of the universities here. And we'll get to work on that almost immediately from tomorrow, to speak to some of the different academic institutions and scientific institutions here in Australia, which are really, as you know, as first class as ours are. So I'll get back to you on that one the minute we can. And thank you very much indeed. And thank you, Ari, for arranging this session.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Mark. So formally we're done. If you have to go, we completely understand. If you want to stick around for you've got a few more minutes, Avi. Is that right?
Yeah, a couple more minutes. Yeah, thank you.
Terrific. So I'll repeat the last question if that's okay. Ron's asking, a vaccine will stimulate the immune response system. Are there any particular dangers with overstimulating the immune system for some people?
So yes, overstimulation of the immune system is of course something that you want to prevent, and a good vaccine is one that stimulates the immune system in a way that helps recognize the virus and destroy it, but doesn't induce such a situation inside the body where the whole body is actually at risk. So absolutely, overstimulation is part of the engineering of a good vaccine.
Great, thank you. Next question was, hold on a sec. Oh, yeah. What about treatment for TB? In South Africa, the first vaccination a baby has is against tuberculosis or shachefet. I think Israel as well. Has that played an impact?
Yeah, so all the knowledge we have from other vaccines is being poured today into antiviral drugs too, is being poured into our programs of developing vaccinations for coronavirus. Having this said, I will say that we have not put enough attention into viral diseases. Luckily, our group and the startup company which came out of Technion called Via Aqua, we're looking at viral diseases already for 5 years, and we noticed them to becoming the next threat. So we have a lot of knowledge, but I think outside of Via Aqua and in other spaces, then we're going to have to go back and learn viruses much more effectively. So I think that's really, really important in the future scientific research.
Thank you. The next question was around smelling and whether, first of all, is loss of smell and taste an indication that you might have the disease? But the second one deals with does the coronavirus actually has its own unique smell? And it's mostly based on Professor Hossam Chaik's research from the Technion, who is known for the development of the bionic nose. What's your view on that?
So I'll start actually with the second aspect. So one, Professor Hossam Chaik, an amazing scientist, really close friend and amazing scientist. It's just fantastic working together in such an institution with him. And regarding, so diseases actually do have a distinct smell. And I think every parent here knows that you can actually smell when your child has a strep throat, or when they have a viral disease, or when your child has an ear infection that's viral or bacterial. If you smell their ear, you'll actually smell the difference. Also, coronavirus seems to have some signature of smell, and so absolutely, and it makes also a lot of sense that when we actually something changes physiologically inside our body, our scent actually changes a little bit, and with advanced devices, you can actually measure that change of scent. It's something that in certain diseases you can immediately smell. So we all know that in the past, the scent of the urine of patients that had diabetes is different than the scent of patients that were healthy, or of healthy people. And that was one way of actually knowing that you're starting to develop diabetes. That was in the urine, but also our own personal scent coming out, being exhaled of our mouths, or on our sweat actually can also be an indication of the virus. Now, does the virus affect our ability to smell? Yes or no? And also the taste. There are more and more evidence of that. And I think this just shows how involved this virus is in our entire body and how important it is we solve it. So if initially we thought, it affects only the lungs, and that's where the life-threatening effect is, that's one thing. But scent and smell and taste are not only in the lungs already. We're talking maybe also effect on the brain, and possibly if that virus still resides inside of us, will it come back? And I think that's exactly where we have to understand more about the virus, what its pathways are. And I believe that in the next year or two, we'll know a lot more about how it actually infects us and its longer term effect, which will also allow better treatment. So now we have like the first line of treatments coming out, and some of them are very wide treatments, not the best when we look at side effects. But in a year, in 2 years, we'll already see very targeted medicines that inhibit the virus from producing. So Ori, I think I'm going to end here because I'm really glad to answer the questions. I have to get back to some of our research work. And I really want to thank you for inviting me here in Zoom. And I hope to host you and Australian colleagues at our laboratory at Technion. Please see this as an open invitation when the skies open again. We're always happy to host people in our laboratory. And we're actually very much looking forward to that. And I hope to see you all soon and keep safe. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Avi. We look forward to seeing you soon as well. And thank you everyone who tuned in today. Thank you. Take care.
Bye. Shalom. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.